All right, Legion, I wrote down the categories in the chat.
Oh, we have a chat. Com separated this, and now all of our screens are off. So great.
You are welcome. Showing off the sweat marks.
Oh yeah, we need to do our the banana rap intro.
No, we don't. I'm gonna go to a deli and get a wrap while you do the intro.
Rap. We're not doing the intro, we're just rapping.
Chicken Caesar salad wrap.
Chicken Caesar. Start the episode, you goon.
Before we begin, the Gamers Advocate would like to remind you that any episode could contain game spoilers, so watch or listen with discretion. And now your hosts, AMKomnenos, Banana, and Legion. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to yet another episode of the Gamers Advocate podcast. We are joined with Bananahammockrepublic, another sleepless, restless night, Bananahammockrepublic, and AMKomnenos, the always rested, always ready to go, but AMKomnenos, and myself, Legion. And we're going over some different consoles and some of our favorite games from the console generation, kind of like a Generation 1, Generation 2, Generation 3 type thing. I don't know if we'll necessarily have time to go over each specific console during that time period and pick up, but if you guys want to, we definitely could. I'm not as adept at all those as you guys are, because I'm more of a PC player, always have been. I know you guys are going to probably dominate this conversation, so without further ado...
That's all we do is dominate.
Dominate the conversation.
Win.
So the first console generation Com wrote down for me, gracefully, is the PS1, Nintendo 64, and Sega Saturn. Do you want to go first then, Com?
Sure. The reason we picked these generations, by the way, is because it's what myself and Banana are going to be more familiar with. I think both of us have played games prior to this, but we didn't really feel that including things like the Spectrum generation, the Commodore generation, was going to be a particularly useful idea, because if you have any memories of playing those games, it's probably not many. You probably didn't play a huge amount, and they almost certainly didn't have like the same impact. So we went with these for editorial reasons. And being as I go up first, PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, Sega Saturn generation, let's go with the obvious one. My iconic game for the PS1 was Final Fantasy VII. I think there was never a question this was going to come up one way or another. It's the game that I put the most time in at that point. It's the first game I remember with multiple discs. It's the first game that I remember being that enormous cinematic experience. It's the first game I remember being known outside of gaming. I remember my parents actually having heard of it when I mentioned it, that I maybe wanted it for Christmas or for a birthday, whatever it was. I remember them being aware and having seen commercials at some point. And occasionally you'd have had these games that would breach outside of the popular gaming consensus, and you'd have parents who are aware of Mario, aware of Sonic, aware of Bomberman, things like that. These very, very, and I mean this in a good way, the silly characters. But all of a sudden they were aware of this game that was about as serious as a game was going to be at the time. And they knew what it was, and they knew that I might want it. So when I got that, it was also about the only game I owned. So all of a sudden, you've put in front of me this 30-plus hour. I say 30-plus, that plus can be a big old plus. It's a 30-plus hour grand adventure.
30-plus year.
Oh, goodness gracious, 28 already. This 30-plus adventure was there. Only game I owned. I couldn't count how much time I spent playing that. And if I go back and I look at what games did I play on that PlayStation, I can kind of remember playing games. I can kind of remember playing Medal of Honor. I can kind of remember playing Track and Field. I can kind of remember playing Breath of Fire 3. I can really remember playing Final Fantasy VII. I can remember pretty much every struggle playing that game. I can remember being pissed off at Moogles. I can remember reading guides on GameWinners.com trying to figure out how to get the Golden Chocobo. I can remember that whole thing. So it has to be mine.
Yeah, I can't argue with it. I think it was the obvious choice. It's such an incredible impact on gaming. that Final Fantasy VII had, that it's really kind of tough to suggest something else. But I'm gonna. My favorite game of all time is Final Fantasy Tactics, and it is a bit of a shame that we both ended up picking Final Fantasy games that were released in 1997 for this category.
The rest of the list.
Yeah. Because there are, I mean, even within Final Fantasy, there are excellent games on PS1. Final Fantasy IX is on there. Final Fantasy VIII, which I am not a big fan of, but is still a great game. And then there are other really incredible PlayStation games. I remember Metal Gear Solid 2 on PlayStation just being incredible. I remember games that did not go on to become nearly as memorable in the general gaming consensus. Things like Twisted Metal being such an incredibly fun game and a huge investment of time for me, despite the fact that I never really accomplished much at all in that game. I just had fun.
Destruction
and then
Derby. Same thing.
My it's funny because like I'll mention Twisted Metal and you'll have fond memories. The game I picked as my favorite of this generation, I feel like even within the gaming community, is a bit of a hidden gem. I mean, Final Fantasy fans will know it, but I feel like until the announcement of the remaster, I was informing people that this game existed and they were unaware up until very recently. So I'm super excited that it's getting the remaster, that people are going to get to experience the story of my favorite game. I just kind of wish it got this, some point previously in the last 28 years since its release.
I think it suffered from the kind of game it was. A lot of us who were willing to take that first leap into the RPGs coming out of Japan at the time, so games like Final Fantasy, games like Breath of Fire, they were somewhat more instantly accessible than Tactics was. I think just the word Tactics in the name already put people off, because now anyone like myself at the time who wouldn't have picked up a Fire Emblem game isn't going to be picking up the Final Fantasy Tactics. The name could only do so much. And I did find that I tried to play it on, goodness knows what it was. If it was the Vita, if it was the PSP, if it was emulated on a phone, I can't remember. But I remember playing it years later and just thinking like, oh my goodness, this is obtuse at the start. What the hell am I supposed to do? So it not feeling as welcoming as the other games, I can see why. For most people, it probably wouldn't be in their top iconic games at the time, and for many Final Fantasy fans, it's not mentioned as one of their favorite games. In fact, you'll find people won't even mention it. We'll go through all the numbered ones, I like 7, I like 10, I like 9, I like whatever, but we don't go into Tactics quite so much. So it's going to be great to see, can that game now maybe get the audience that it deserved with this remaster coming out in the next months, isn't it? Isn't it quite soon?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be very soon. I know it's already available for pre-order on Steam.
Well deserved. It's about time that gets out there. So I'm very excited for that release. And I hope to give it a try myself, and maybe then it could be my favorite PS5 game.
I do like that. I did my little Let's Play, and then Square Enix was like, "Well, that sucked. Let's fix that." Yeah, let's put some real voice actors into this game.
September 30th, 2025, by the way.
So in the late 90s, PlayStation really wasn't on my radar at all. Back in the day, that was not a given that was going to succeed. I mean, it wasn't really, they didn't even give wholehearted effort into saying that this is going to be our future. It was kind of more of an experiment to see if it would actually take off. So I didn't really get into the Sony PlayStation at all. Sony was a upper echelon electronics title. It wasn't designed for games or anything like that. It's what you played games on.
They make televisions.
They made televisions, and yeah. But at the time, I had I didn't have any kids in the late 90s. My oldest was born in 99, so I guess the very end of the 90s. But Nintendo 64,
That's how numbers work.
Yeah. When Nintendo 64, when that finally came out, and The kids, I thought, well, they're never going to play this, but I just, there was a friend of mine that had one, and it was Majora's Mask. When I saw that, that reminded me so much of Zelda 2, that in spirit. And Zelda 2 was never really beloved, and there's obvious reasons why, but it was the first, integration of...
People are wrong.
Yeah, it was the first integration of Dark Link and a bunch of other things that actually showed up later on, and it was actually really interesting to see a lot of those things in Majora's like, this is what I was envisioning in my head when I was playing Zelda 2. A lot of those things that they couldn't represent physically were there, and it was very imaginative. It was very immersive in that respect. It was, very, very... ingenious, I thought, with what they did with that. So it took the Majora's Mask, which isn't always beloved. I think Ocarina of Time is more beloved, but Majora's Mask really pulled me into that, and that's why for me it's always been my favorite of that generation, because it actually pulled me back into a console that I hadn't touched for forever. So
yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting link to draw between those two. And it makes a lot of sense now that you've said it, but it's probably not one I would have initially thought of. I think it is a great comparison, though, because Majora's Mask did very similarly to Zelda 2 take Zelda in a new direction and really try new things, which was not what Zelda did for a long time. After Majora's Mask and after Zelda 2, they were like, all right, we have a formula that worked. Let's not deviate too much from that. But Majora's Mask is a very different Zelda game from Ocarina of Time. Despite using a lot of the same assets, Zelda 2 was a very, very different game from the original Zelda. And I think that the taking the risk and going in a different direction is a little underappreciated in both of those games. I think they both did something pretty incredible, and I definitely consider them among my favorites in the Zelda, purely based on the merit of doing something new and imaginative and still making a fun, pretty well-made game in kind of a new territory.
yeah, but I think both of them also didn't hold your hand. You had to figure it out. And it was there. It was funny because some of the clues are obvious in hindsight, but it's like what forest? What are you talking about? There's a lot of forests. The forest west of
generally, like generationally, that's what that generation of gaming often was. We hadn't really worried too much about the gamer's experience in a lot of these games, so we were often quite vague with some of the clues we put in the game, and we didn't do much hand-holding, something which I'm really glad that we actually do nowadays instead. And it's often what I find about that generation as a whole of games. I often find they can be a bit awkward to go back to when you're playing them, and the controls are often a bit janky, but you can get used to those. But I find sometimes just the quality of life improvements we come to expect, or better communication from a game, what we should be doing next, I think they've become a lot better at that as the years have gone by. And they were probably thinking at the time that most people only own one game at a time, 2 games at a time. It doesn't matter if we make it really awkward and a pain in the ass. Whereas now, I think developers are much more conscious of the fact that today, well, there's a Steam sale on right now, so if I don't like your game, I'll go buy another one for $4. And it lends itself towards a very, very different kind of gaming development.
I am glad you brought that point up, because you mentioned that when you were discussing Final Fantasy VII, that at the time it was probably the only game you had for PlayStation for a while, and then got another game for that console. I think that you'll probably see that in our listings of our favorite games. Is the more modern the system is, the more kind of contemporary to what we're currently playing on, the harder it will be to have a favorite, because we have so many more options available to us now.
Yeah, I was just thinking that because of the second generation, when we go into that one, that's going to be rough, I think.
Well, let's push it into it now then.
Okay.
The second big generation.
So for me, I'll go first, so that way you guys can, because again, I have a lot less experience in these. But I was conflicted because Xbox had the code.
Should we quickly define which consoles we were going to be looking at?
The second generation PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and Dreamcast, Sega Dreamcast, the wonderful It's like a dream.
Everyone's
Yes.
favorite console.
Yeah. Which was a good console, but it was more powerful than the GameCube for sure. But oh well. Just
I think many consoles couldn't have stood up to what the PS2 did in that generation. You were coming up against just a powerhouse, which is still an enormous console worldwide.
Well, just like Beta was a better quality than VHS, but that didn't win. So, but for me, the PS2 and Xbox had KOTOR, and that just landed it for me. I was like, that's the best game I've even now is one of my top 5 games. But the PS2 had God of War with Kratos.
Yep.
So as an execution, God of War. But for me, it's Xbox, the KOTOR. But, you know, KOTOR came out on PC, which is where I ended up playing it. And, but yeah, the Xbox got first crack at that about 5 months before. I had to look that up. But yeah, they got first crack at it for 5 months before I got to even touch it on PC, which I was pissed off about. But God of War on PS2. Ooh. Oh, that redefined it.
Yeah, I feel like that's something we should just note in these. So a lot of the games that we'll be choosing in the more recent generations were likely available on multiple consoles. Oh, yeah. So these will probably be games we've selected because our experience with the game happened on that specific console.
Yeah. And it'll often be it lined up with that time nicely. It's not going to be the case for me, but I'd imagine for Legion, there's very probably the case that he will actually have played a game on the PC rather than said console, just because of Legion's console ownership history. But it's going to be a game that is heavily associated with a console, or is known as being from that generation. So we're allowing ourselves a bit of broadness with the definition there. And KOTOR, yeah, I remember KOTOR standing out. I ended up playing it actually on the Xbox shortly after it came out, and it was a time when. Now I think it can be quite hard to go back to because of the peculiarities of the system, where it feels like you're playing an action game, but actually you're really not. You're playing Baldur's Gate in space. So it can be a bit peculiar. At the time, I didn't worry quite so much, and again, didn't know many games, so you play whichever game you had. And I remember it feeling very special. It was one of those first games which gave me that feeling of, oh wow, I can go anywhere. And really, no, it's quite confined because of the limitations of the hardware at the time. But it didn't feel confined. And when you gained access to the Ebon Hawk, I was going to say Ebonheart, but that's a town in Morrowind. When you gained access to that and had that feeling of, shit, I can go anywhere, that really felt like something incredible, generationally defining.
Yeah,
You don't have to add anything if there's nothing to add. You can just move on to your game.
Well said. So from this generation, and Legion's absolutely right, this is a really tough generation for me to pin down to a single game. And I'm honestly a little surprised with myself with the game that like stands out for me in this generation. For me, it's Paper Mario: Thousand Year Door. With all of the games that are available on PS2 and Xbox, for me to choose a Nintendo game for this era feels very weird. But when you think of the exclusives that PS2 had with God of War and Final Fantasy X, which is one of my favorites in that series, and then Halo games on Xbox being the enormous franchise that they became, I really did enjoy those games and they were spectacular. But I haven't gone back and played the original Combat Evolved. I've played the Master Chief Collection that has that and has integrated some modern technology into it. I have played the remaster of Final Fantasy X. I've gone back and played the original Paper Mario: Thousand Year Door because that game just felt so incredible at the time, and I feel like it holds up. And it's one of the games that I think of when I think of the GameCube. And it's kind of the definitive game from that era of Nintendo for me, to such a degree that it almost overshadows the definitive games of the other consoles. So as tough as it is for me to pick a game that is, you know, my favorite over Final Fantasy X, over Halo, Paper Mario was just a very special game for me.
And that's kind of what mine's going to end up being as well. There's going to be this is special for me. And I think that's what this is always going to come down to at some point, is that there's going to be a huge amount of this was just the right game for me at the right time. If you think of all the great games that you didn't play just because you didn't play them, or the great games that sometimes you just bounced off because whatever reason it just didn't appeal to you in that moment. I can tell you there's a whole bunch of those games that if the moment were right, I'd have played them. Half-Life, I never played Half-Life. I played the first half hour, I didn't like it. I've just started replaying last week Black Mesa, which is basically Half-Life. And I'm having the best time. I think it's incredible. But in the moment, it wasn't right for me. And for you, Paper Mario was just the right thing at that right time. And then it's held up as well. And when you go back and play it, does it sort of take you back, or are you enjoying the experience fresh every time?
I think it does take me back, but I think there are things that I appreciate new every time that are things that like probably wouldn't have made a big difference to me as a kid playing it, but now that I'm an adult, I can appreciate, things like pacing or things like the amount of time that I need to invest to accomplish something in a game, and recognizing that the developers built the game in such a way that the fact that I had unlimited free time when this game came out wasn't a big part of their game design.
Yeah.
So I definitely do think it is that balance of nostalgia and just being a quality game.
Okay. Then I'm going to move on and give you my one. So, same problem. Honorable mentions. I ended up with a whole bunch of them, and I'll literally just say them just by name very quickly. So there was Fable, Morrowind, Bully, GTA San Andreas, Final Fantasy X. And all of those had every chance of making it into spot number one. And just to be clear, I haven't been concerned about trying to make my games sound different. If Final Fantasy X was going to be the top, I wouldn't have minded I had Final Fantasy VII and PS1. I'm perfectly fine with doing that repeating series. This is really, Final Fantasy X is slightly below my top game. And my top game is one I had to double check, because Banana mentioned it during their PS1 days. And I had to double check. It's a PS2 title, and it's Metal Gear Solid 2. Which I think...
I might have just been thinking of Metal Gear Solid then.
Very possible. I mean, that was a while ago. And the consoles had quite a short shelf life then, right? So there's probably a bit of crossover.
It definitely was Metal Gear Solid 1. I don't know why. I've just advanced every game in that series by one. So there is no Metal Gear Solid 1 in my memory. I started with 2 because there's so much shit going on that had to be the second game, right?
The idea of just Banana's revised Metal Gear Solid timeline. But it's just...
Yes.
MGS2 is a very special game. I think it was one of the very first games, Metal Gear Solid probably being the first, where I thought this is someone who's making an auteur-style project in video gaming. Someone where you can actually feel the fingerprints of the artist coming through the game. I don't think anyone else could have made Metal Gear Solid 2. You could have given some other game design team, some other game designer, some lead developer the script. You could have given them every possible idea for that game, and they would never have produced Metal Gear Solid 2. It just has Hideo Kojima's fingerprints all over that damn game. Technically, I'm not going to say it holds up, because it's very old. But it kind of holds up. It kind of does. Just some of that attention to detail, being able to pop the bottles in the tanker in the very first area, all the little peculiarities of interaction with the game and the game world. We never made a living game world until much later in gaming history. Heck, you could probably argue in many ways we haven't to this day. We've had some great examples of near hits, but not quite. Metal Gear Solid 2 got further than it had any right to do at that point in time. But also, right game, right time. Because when I was a kid, I used to come home after school and no one was going to be home. It was just me. I would come home. My dad was in work. My mum was in work. And that was it. I'd come home, kind of keep busy, do whatever for a few hours. One day I came home and there was a box on the settee, on the couch. And it was a boxed up PlayStation 2 Metal Gear Solid 2 edition. Not edition, but Metal Gear Solid 2 came packaged with it. And I came in and I stared at that box, not knowing what the hell I was looking at. Just thinking wait, is this for me? And it's weirdly,
Your parents just taunting you with a system they got for somebody else.
It didn't feel unlikely, but it's peculiar. It's one of 2 days. This isn't a joke or anything like that. It's one of 2 days I can remember coming home from school and like coming in and there being something. And one is, one is me getting this game console, and the other is 9/11. It's the two things where I was just like, holy shit, this is a big day. Do you know what I mean? It sticks in the memory in a way that no other day did. And there were all these different days when you'd come home and do something, I presume, but they never made for core formative memories.
Yeah.
And you do have the global ones, and this would be people who would have been alive in the 60s, like JFK's assassination there, that they remember. And then people like us alive in the 2000s where you remember what you were doing on 9/11 when the news came through. And for me, weirdly enough, the one that core memory that fits in exactly the same scenario is coming home and seeing that console there. And it's not the most lighthearted approach to the tale, but it's just tied in to this big, massive memory of that.
Really?
Was my
you don't
first
think
console.
tying this to 9/11 was the most lighthearted approach?
I'm being honest with you. I'm opening my heart.
I'm not shaming you.
It feels a bit like
I'm shaming you. Yeah, I'm shaming you a bit.
But yes, it's one of those things where it's one. You have these societally collective memories that you have, and then you have your own unique ones. And that is one of my real core formative ones that has just always been my system now. And I always associate Metal Gear Solid with coming home from school in a weird way that I associate coming home from school with those two things, because that's the two things I can remember specifically walking in my door to my home. And this is happening. One was 9/11 and one was coming home and just being there and finding that. And it's just this really peculiar thing where it was just, became a part of my core lore, core memories.
Yeah, 9/11 was wild because
Jesus, don't drag us down this path.
No. I was in emergency services, and so I got the news almost immediately. And so we had to put it. We had access. We had feeds and stuff of what was going on, and when we were finally released, because I couldn't be released if it was under a national emergency. We didn't know what we were. So even though I was done with my shift, I could not technically leave by duty. And so when I drove home the streets of Houston, after I've told Con before, I only live maybe 8 miles away from where I worked. It took me an hour and a half usually to get to home after work because of the traffic. 10 minutes. Got there in 10 minutes, no problem.
I remember my dad saying something similar, because I think if you weren't alive at the time, you might not necessarily understand like how weirdly international, like how global that moment was that day. There've been other days in history that are global, but that one felt really, really unique. And a part of that might be our age being reflected in it as well. My dad got sent home from work early. Like in the end, it wasn't because the services got shut down where he was. He was working in public transport infrastructure, and he got sent home early just because they didn't really know what to do. They were waiting on directives from government, like were they going to close things down? Were they not going to be? In the end, they realized they had too many staffs. They sent a whole bunch home. And one of the things that he remembered was getting home really quick, because he didn't go home during rush hour. He went home, an hour and a half earlier, whatever it was. And instead of being in that 5 p.m. traffic, he was home in the 3:30 p.m. traffic. So his hour drive turned into a 15-minute thing.
You know, like those movies or those games that are like post-apocalyptic zombie stuff, and there's like nothing, nobody's on. It was like that. Exactly, like the dead silence.
And what's the other time that was like that? If you went driving during COVID. It was a very similar thing, this peculiarity of like, what the fuck is
people
actually
were
happening?
out in COVID. I saw one car.
Not here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. America, people were out.
Yeah.
I want to point out that, like, when we do our quick little recap and we go through the list really quickly, when we get to this era of video games, Legion's favorite game is going to be KOTOR, mine's going to be Paper Mario, and yours is going to be 9/11.
like to clarify that my favorite game is Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yes, but the only thing people are going to remember from this conversation is that Cobb has the same criteria for memories as of getting Metal Gear Solid 2 as he does 9/11.
Oh my gosh. Legion, we're redoing this whole bit.
Yeah. And I'm not going to mention 9/11 at all.
Or we're going to do a whole new episode based solely on that topic.
Yeah. My favorite games associated with terrible tragedies.
That would be a genuinely interesting topic. Games associated with tragedy, with real life tragedy. I would be fascinated what there are.
Well, we'll go to Generation 3. Generation 3 is the PS3, Xbox 360, and Nintendo Wii. Com, do you want to go first? Oh no, we need to go to Banana.
Banana hasn't gone first. Yeah, let's have Banana.
Well, this is going to be tricky because I feel like we probably should have checked each other's lists first. Because I'm picking Mass Effect.
Which one? Shit, I might have to rewrite.
Mass Effect 1.
Keep it going then, buddy.
I feel like we've probably talked about Mass Effect enough for people who are following the channel to know what it is that I really liked about that game. But that's another game that I've gone back to countless times. I have replayed that game in its entirety. I've done all of the side missions so many times to experience everything that game has to offer, just because I think it's so engaging. It's such a fun world, a fun universe that they created with this powerful narrative behind it and incredible gameplay that keep you engaged as you're exploring everything. That I can't think of anything else from that era that really competes as far as just how impactful it was.
Well, it was on my list as my favorite, so yeah, I agree. Thanks, buddy.
Well, I played it on PC, but I will say that Mass Effect is the reason why BioWare didn't do KOTOR 2. Because they were told, hey, look.
They were busy wasting their time with that fucking thing.
Idiots.
Well, after KOTOR, they had a lot of success, and they were offered the option, but they were also given a timeline of within like 14 months or something crazy. And they're like, nah, we're working on this other thing. We're good. We're fine. So just the same way they left Baldur's Gate with the Wizards of the Coast, their group, and Interplay and their whole shenanigans and stuff. They said, no, we're going to do our own thing. And so they made KOTOR and then Jade Empire, and then it went, and from there they said, no, we're going to do our own thing. We're going to make Mass Effect. So Mass Effect is actually a bold decision by BioWare to leave established IPs and do their own thing. It was a risk that they took, and obviously they kind of knew the game well enough that this is going to succeed. And I can't say enough about Mass Effect. Obviously, I played it a ton.
Yeah, I'll jump into another one. So I actually didn't have Mass Effect down as my favorite. I had Mass Effect 3 as my favorite, but for argument's sake, I'll put that now into the honorable mentions and pick something new. So I had a few honorable mentions again. So this would be BioShock. It was very special. GTA 4. It was a very special game. XCOM, which I wouldn't have put down initially, and I think if we had said PC games, it might have been my favorite, but I don't associate it as a console game, so it's an honorable mention. MGS5, The Phantom Pain, which I did not believe that was that generation, with how good that looked and still looks. Unbelievable. Gears of War, which was probably my favorite of that style of combat. It does suffer a little from the everything must be brown and grey, but I think being from that time, it's hard to judge a game from that time. Any game that comes out 3 or 4 years later should be judged for it, but at the time, yeah, that was just what they were doing, and they were doing something quite new and interesting with that. So my PS3, I think it was PS3 I played it on, game of choice would have been a game which should really be all of our favorites and everyone's favorites, but I don't think will be, and it's Guitar Hero. And this could also be Rock Band, it could be whichever of those. I can't think outside of the Wii of a game that did more to make gaming accessible than something like Guitar Hero or Rock Band. This was a game that brought people into gaming It was a game that made gaming very, very accessible. It was very scalable, which I thought was an interesting thing. You could always have your simpler difficulties. You could always expand it by picking up these DLCs and so forth. And of course, we do end up in a situation then where we slip into, hold on, this isn't a good thing anymore. When we start slipping into a world where we're DLCing 2 or 3 songs together and we're paying $5 or whatever each time. But it was a game that made gaming available to people who might not otherwise consider gaming, and as a secondary note, and I think to my mind more important, it made music available to people who might not always have been interested either. I think this opened people up to a whole world of music that they might otherwise never have tried listening to. People might not have listened to Megadeth, they might not have listened to in Dragon Force, and they shouldn't listen to Dragon Force, let's be clear. But it opened up this world to people that they could actually take part in, this wider culture. I think gaming sometimes, it lets itself down with how insular it sometimes feels. This isn't a uniquely gaming problem, but when you get into gaming as a culture, you'll find people who then they love gaming games. They love gaming art. They love gaming costumes. They love gaming soundtracks. They love gaming aesthetics. And it's such a shame because there's this wonderful wide world out there of film and music and cinema. And I think this is one of those few games that made a huge crossover and brought a whole world of fucking amazing shit to people who might not necessarily have actually got into it themselves. So yeah, Guitar Hero. And I think it's a kind of a shame that those kind of games don't really exist anymore. At the same time, they had their day. We don't need it again. They had their day, it's fine. But I think it's a little bit of a shame that we don't have that party thing quite as much as we used to. The Guitar Heroes, the rock bands, the Sing Stars, whatever it might be.
You know who'd agree with you though?
Banana.
Slash loved
Really?
Guitar Hero. And he would talk about, like, it's different because, you know, obviously you play guitar so differently. He says, but can you imagine like an actual rock star getting into the mechanics of like, yeah, the crowd's cheering on it, you know? He's a good guy. I met him in Austin at Stubbs one time, and he's a real good guy. But yeah, you gotta love a Guitar Hero who has his own brand within Guitar Hero. Getting excited about Guitar Hero. That's just meta.
and that's it. It's the bringing in this other world to gaming, like Slash getting excited about Guitar Hero. I can't imagine the TV trailer where Slash gets excited about Final Fantasy 12. Now, maybe he should be, because it's really good, but it's not going to happen. It's a different culture. And then when you bring these things together, that's actually kind of beautiful. And games had always used soundtracks. I mean, sometimes you'll hear a game where they license popular music, and that's great. And I remember playing Guardians of the Galaxy for a bit and having really good fun. There was some cool ass music in there that was just really fun to listen to. It's not the same. It's not the same. This is a whole different level. Go on then, Legion. Pull us through into a bit further into the PS3, Xbox. Oh, did we clarify what the era was, by the way? It's PS3, Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii.
Nintendo Wii, yeah. So I'm bifurcated again on my decision for what I thought was the best game. Well, what I thought was the best game for that era versus the best game experience I had. And I think the Nintendo Wii Metroid Prime trilogy, because I was a huge Metroid fan. I mean, to me, that just sucked me into it. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is what I want the Wii for. But I think the PS3, God of War 3, Kratos again, you know, just 2 wasn't a great game. I mean, it was okay. 1 was a great game. 3 was a great game. And the PS3 really took advantage of the graphics that it had for that time and told the story the way it really should have been told. It's kind of like Mass Effect, the difference between 1 and 3 and the whole graphical fidelity and some of the mechanics and stuff. Everything comes together in God of War 3. And so for PS3, God of War 3 to me was the greatest game during that whole generation. But that's just me, of course.
I think I might have mentioned to you that it's the only God of War game that I've played all the way through. I think I briefly tried the old God of War at a friend's place, enjoyed it. I've tried the remake, and I do want to play it at some point. Not remake, sorry, the reboots. 3 just took me for 12, 15 hours, whatever it was, and it was a blast. And it was a real... I remember playing it and thinking, hold on, what year did this come out? 1999? Because it just felt like the most video game that I'd played in a very long time. There was no delusions of grandeur or ideas beyond its station, because it wasn't supposed to have them. And yeah, there was the interesting world and the setup, and you did have mythology in there, and that was cool. But ultimately, the game was, look, enemies, kill them. And there's something about that which is so pure and fun and really gets to the heart of what video gaming is supposed to be. And it's the kind of thing that'll come up in one of my honorable mentions for the next generation, is it was fun as hell. And you don't always get that with gaming, right? And a lot of my favorite games aren't fun as hell. But that is fun as hell.
I think that's a constant thing you'll see with me. If it's a console game, my mind goes to those old retro games because that's what I grew up on, and those were not, outside of Zelda, of course, which even Zelda was more or less the original, The Legend of Zelda. That was, it was an RPG with some puzzle stuff, but really it was just focused on progressing the story. There wasn't really anything complex about that. It was fun as hell. I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours playing that game. But you'll notice that, like with console games, that's how I gravitate towards, is like, what can I sit down and just play versus getting immersed in it, because that's what my PC is for, unfortunately. Yeah.
We have exactly the opposite. For my PC, I prefer games that I can just kind of like jump into, blast for maybe half an hour, whereas the console is I'm going to settle on the couch now. What world can I get dragged into?
This is what I play in the most comfortable chair I own. Yeah. So I'm going to sink a lot of time into this one.
That's so cool that you just have that slight difference in perspective.
Two sides, same coin.
Yeah, we have like the exact opposite take on something that's really just a binary choice. It's fascinating.
Since we're kind of in the middle of our discussion here, we've just finished our tier 3. I do want to ask, because when you mentioned your experience with God of War 3, it kind of triggered something for me with this discussion. I don't know what the exact time frame of each of these eras of gaming really is, when the era begins and ends, but which one of these feels like the longest time frame to you? Because for me, this PS3, Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii, that feels like the largest of these eras, simply because of the sheer number of games available to me at this point. When I hit the Xbox 360 era, I had so many games, and so many games to the point that like I can remember the games that I played at the beginning of that era and feeling like by the games that I played at the end of that era, they had advanced. They felt like almost they belong to a new generation.
Well, I would say that third generation feels comfortable even now. That's why it feels there's no separation between that and now versus 1 and 2. I could still play a third generation now and still get the same feeling and effect, and there's nothing distancing me from the gameplay or the graphics.
I think for me, I think 4 probably was the longest. The PS4 was around for God knows how long. Whereas I feel the PS3 didn't have as long a life cycle. I could be wrong. It might objectively be longer. It doesn't feel that way. 3, I think it feels long because of the massive progress I feel was made during that time. I think that sort of era of like 2006, 2014, that kind of time, we advanced so much in game development and game design that playing a game at the start of it feels nothing like playing a game at the end of it. And so many norms were established in this period. So many. I just feel the way that we made our games. So not the technology, not the graphics, but literally the control systems we used, the idea of what a game should feel like, what a game should play like, the UIs we used, that they evolved so fucking much, which I think you can't say for the PS1 because it was just all over the place. Just that era was just everyone made their own shit. And eventually we kind of figured it out. PS2, same thing. Metal Gear Solid 2, it's not a good control system by modern standards. Like hold square to aim and push it a little bit harder. It was on PS1. Jack off. But I think for me, the one that feels the longest really for me is the PS2, that era, just because of how old I was at the time. So you could game sort of, I probably spent more time gaming then, so there's probably just more time spent. And just the sheer fucking density of amazing titles in a really short period, which applies to all these other eras, I guess. But I wasn't 16 during most of those other eras.
Yeah. That might be a big part of it, is that I just had all the time in the world to play video games.
Yeah.
So no matter how long the period was, I was maximizing my video game time.
Damn right, boy.
And the true hero of that third generation,
My
Xbox
mum.
controller.
I meant that. Oh, still my controller of choice to this day on the PC, and I will insist and die on the hill that this stick position is the best stick position.
Best. Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible.
It's the cheapest.
Also, we should just clarify the 360 controller. Because you said Xbox controller, and the Xbox controller sucks.
No. I said Xbox 360. Maybe I missed that. I meant to say Xbox 360.
Or
yeah.
I heard Xbox controller.
I think I heard Xbox as well.
Well,
but I
I
think
said
it's because
third
now we
generation, the
think
hero of the
that-
third generation. I probably just forgot to. Okay.
He did do that. That's true. But I think now we associate that, don't we, as the Xbox controller, because the Xbox controller had such a short lifespan. Even within its own console, they were already redesigning it. Like, oh, this might be a bit enormous. Taking a cue that the Nintendo GameCube never did. No, sorry, not the GameCube, the 64. The GameCube was a cool controller.
Yeah, GameCube controller wasn't bad. The 64, I think we've established the worst controller in our opinion.
Yeah,
Like,
it's rough shit.
with the exception of the Sega CDI or the Philips CDI presentation controller, which was not for gaming. It was literally for making presentations. The N64 controller was the worst.
So a friend of mine was really big into RTS, and I played a ton of RTS games. And we had a third friend who wasn't really into games, but he wanted to game with us. And so we were like, this is what we're playing. We're playing like StarCraft. We're playing Age of Empires. And we were like, why is he so bad? Like, I've played with bad players. It's not why is he so and then we finally asked, what are you using? I mean, how because how do you bring that up without hurting his feelings, right?
Why do you suck?
He was using a pin controller, one of those pins that, for back when you would
I've got one of those here.
yeah, stylus type. And that's what he was using.
I use it for maths.
He was using it for
Friends, wow.
RTSs. I was like, how did you even do that? But
I would love for the three of you to play like StarCraft, where you all use the stylus controller and just watch him wipe the floor with you.
yeah,
I'm
we had
breaking
no
out
idea. Yeah.
I'm breaking out my Guitar Hero controller. No
Yeah.
way, mate.
Well, we were like, we'll get you a mouse. Is that what's the issue? He's like, no, I just don't like it. I prefer this. And we're like, yeah, but you suck.
Yeah, you suck.
So, loser.
You're so bad, our friendship is at risk.
Right. Okay, so before your friend listens to this, and all of a sudden the podcast's over, I'm moving us on to the next topic. So we're into the final, not the final, sorry, the last real full generation, because after this we're into generations that we're still in. So this would be what we're loosely calling our fourth generation, and the consoles at the time are the PS4, the Xbox One, the Nintendo Switch, and the Wii U, which I guess someone owned. Now,
I fucking love the Wii U.
I've heard it's amazing. I've really heard it's an
an
outstanding console.
exceptional console that had like 3 games.
And that'll do it for you. And this actually is where, so I'm going to lead into this one. I think this generation of gaming is an incredible generation. For me, it's the generation where I got back into gaming. So that third generation, I didn't really game much during it because I was too busy just sort of going out, being a young adult, and just trying to do more like life, essentially, and trying to find your path, what you want to do. And with the PS4, I got back into gaming. So, honorable mentions, there's quite a few. One of them, it feels a shame to make it the honorable mention, but I'm going to, which is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Then Spider-Man on the PlayStation, which I think is an incredible game. Yakuza 0, Bloodborne, and Dark Souls 3, and I will not pick between them. Persona 5 Royal, Dragon Quest 11, Uncharted 4. It's an amazing generation. And I didn't even talk about The Last of Us, or Ghost of Tsushima, or I think Diablo might have been on this, or one of them at least. Limbo, games like this. My number one game from this era is also contemporaneously relevant. It's Death Stranding. I think Death Stranding is what we say we want our games to be. It's genuinely unique and different. And mentioning earlier with Metal Gear Solid 2 that I don't think anyone else could have made Metal Gear Solid 2, I don't think anyone else could have made Death Stranding. And in video gaming, we need more of that. We need games that aren't what we expect them to be. We need games that, in some ways, disappoint us. We need games that defy logic in making them, because this shouldn't work. It's a game where you walk from place to place and hand deliver parcels. And yeah, there's more to it. Kind of. There are other things, but that's not the point. The point of it is walking from place to place and interacting with people you'll never meet in these really abstract ways where you just send them things to help them out, not even directly. And I love the idea of Kojima making this game. He was talking about how he's a very lonely person. He's someone who, even when something's like going right in his life, he just feels lonely from time to time. And it's probably the most on-the-nose thing is he says he's sure gamers feel this way too. So he decided to make a theme of his game, this idea of loneliness, and no, you are not alone. You are in this together with other people. And Legion mentioned a while back how they like the idea of, these games, but they want to play on their own. I think we talked about it with reference to Dark Souls and with reference to Death Stranding, is you don't want to be forced into this multiplayer world when actually it's a single-player game and you want to play it single-player. I think the amazing, interesting thing about Death Stranding is it's not single player. It very much is, but it absolutely isn't. And if you want to play Death Stranding as a single player game, you're actually not really playing Death Stranding. Because it's not about that. It's about community. It's about people who never even see each other's faces helping each other out. It's a special, unique game. And Final Fantasy VII is really easy to describe. Death Stranding is much harder to actually describe and pin down what makes it great. But I think for me, it's certainly my favorite game in that generation. And I think you could make a case that it's probably the overall, or possibly the overall greatest game of that generation.
I mean,
I think you guys haven't played it, right?
Ending your discussion with that line makes it really tough for us to go into our picks.
Yeah.
So let's hear the honorable mentions.
Yeah. So I think I've nailed the greatest game of this generation. But what do you two fucks have to say about this?
And you haven't played this, right?
Yeah. Insane. Yeah.
And that's where we're gonna call it an episode.
just play the death music from Clear and Obscure right there.
If you have any honorable mentions you'd like to mention now that we're in it, put it in the comments.
If you'd like to agree with Com.
I love that there's still another category after this. We're just gonna end the episode now.
Well, I think what was going on in my head for this generation was that this was the first generation that actually bridged a lot of consoles with PC, which is my main format. So a lot of the games that I think are like, oh, that's a great game. That's a great game. I said, but you know what? That was exclusive to the Xbox One, or that was exclusive to the PS, but I can play them on PC now. So it's really hard for me to really, find a game that's unique to that. But one that sticks out is Bloodborne, because it's only on PS4. Well, now PS5, but so you have to get a PS, to play it, and it's worth playing just for that one game. I would say that, PS4 is definitely worth getting just for Bloodborne. Now it has a lot of other little things, but it's just, to me, it's the best Souls game easily. It doesn't even come close. And I'm not even a Souls fan, but I love Bloodborne. I love Bloodborne. I love what it's doing. I love what it's trying to say. I love all the little people that you can talk to between their windows, or through their walls, or whatever. That's just an amazing little detail that I love that in other games that are similar to that came before it. And when they integrated that, I'm like, this doesn't have to be here, but I'm glad they did it. But I think overall, I think the PS4 is probably the closest thing, I think, as far as overall because like I said, there's a lot of Xbox titles that are playable on PC. That's just how they're tied. Probably the original God of War before it came out on PC. The reboot, I should say. So again, another God of War. Funny how that worked out. But yeah, Bloodborne easily number one overall, I think, for that grouping, because it was always that exclusive title. Yeah.
There's a peculiarity to the storytelling in Dark Souls and Bloodborne, which we've talked about before. This idea that sometimes you can read everything you find. You can pick up every item, you can read the descriptions, you can look at the bosses, look at the way they're designed, you can look at the environments they're in. And you can find yourself coming out at the end of the game and thinking, what the fuck was that about? Like, even if you're putting effort into understanding it, and you have to go on YouTube and watch some lore video as people agree and disagree with each other on what the story actually was and who these characters actually were. And there's, oddly enough, just like the driving home in the snow, there's a little story about Miyazaki making the games that goes into sort of why this feeling emerges. It's a little bit shorter, but it's when Miyazaki was a small child, he was a kid who loved to read books. And he would get books given to him by members of his family that he would go home and read. And now and again, he'd be given books where he just didn't understand what was going on. He would just be reading it and think, I don't get it. I don't get it. The book might be in a foreign language, or the book might be just too complex and above his head. And he'd just make it up. Okay, whatever is in this paragraph until this paragraph, I'm going to make that up. And he felt like he was co-authoring the worlds that he was inhabiting. But there was always a mystery there, because he didn't actually know if he was right. He didn't know what was correct, how much of it was his interpretation, how much of it was what the author actually originally intended. And if you go through and you play these games, you can have a very similar feeling that you're someone going through being given a whole bunch of the story along with a bunch of stuff that you actually don't understand, and then you build on top of that your interpretations to try and figure out what's going on. I think he's just one of those really interesting game directors where you can see in his life where his game methodology actually comes from.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the Japanese developers seem to integrate their personal lives, which is not a bad thing at all. I mean, if it hits you, I mean, it's a great narrative to pull from. You know, Miyamoto, is that his name? I mean,
yeah,
Miyamoto for the Zelda series. He got lost when he was a child one time, and he got lost in like the little forest. He saw this little thing that he always saw from a distance when he was a kid, and he decided to go in there, and he got a little lost. He got turned around, and it was that little bit of excitement that he got from being lost, and then he found his way out, that inspired the Zelda games originally. So
that's why when you load up Zelda, you have no idea where the fuck to go.
Yeah, Zelda 2 explained.
Yeah.
This is one of the things, isn't it? It's motivation that you get from something like this, from an experience in your life that you want to communicate onto others. It's probably one of the easiest possible things that you could use to make art, because it's something that means something to you. When we talk about passion projects and ideas that we want to produce, well, if we want to do it, we're probably going to work a bit harder. We're probably going to try and really get that across correctly. And these people, they've poured something in. Miyamoto has brought in this sense of mystery and wonder that he wanted to bring because it meant something to him, and that's where we end up with games like Zelda. Then we got Miyazaki, who's got his friends helping him, the people helping him in the snow, and his memories of being a child and not really understanding these books and how to fill in the gaps, that goes on to make mechanics in Dark Souls. Then you got Kojima wanting to emphasize that feeling of loneliness that he gets, and you get Death Stranding from it. And Clair Obscur, people who loved these games, Final Fantasy VIII, Paper Mario, I think, and a few others. And then they take these on and they want to build a game from these games that they loved, and they want to build the game that they want to play. And then they go on and build something special.
And they ask the question, is France even real?
I need to, I did write it down a little bit. I think my hot take on Clair Obscur is that it should never have been translated into English. Like,
that's a good point.
Never. Yeah. You, right? You, all of you out there, you spent how many years treating France as a joke? Every time that you went, oh, baguette, every time you did this and reduced an entire country down to an Eiffel Tower, a beret, and a fucking snack. Every time you did this, you reduced the whole thing of what made that country a country and reduced it down to a punchline. That's it. And now, there's a beautiful, poetic game that comes out. It's about death. It's about loss. It's about real people, right? And now you want to be allowed in and take France seriously. No. No, you don't deserve this, because every single time that you spent decades desecrating the cathedral of French culture, and now you want to take a guided tour through it. No. You need to learn French to deserve this game. That's what I say. You need to learn French. Go home, play it in French, or don't play it at all. The beauty is going to pass you by. The depth is rejecting you because you have decided not to learn French and engage with this culture properly. Some doors are supposed to stay shut.
I get what you're saying there, but it was funny.
But you can unlock a special costume that is pretty much you carrying around a baguette. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm allowed to laugh at that. You're not.
That's not how that works.
You've got to earn the right.
So
When you understand the subjunctive case in French,
I would
you can
have
play the game.
agreed with you up to that point. I really think that a lot of games that, especially if they're developed by that country and it's very influenced by that area, why not? Why not just make it the main language and it has subtitles in yours? I don't have a problem with that whatsoever.
No, you're getting French subtitles as well. This is I want no localization.
Yeah, okay.
You heard it's good, you have to learn French. I think like I exaggerate slightly. So this is it's an exaggeration, which coincidentally is also my opinion. But I do think that localization is a thing sometimes that we shouldn't necessarily do. I don't know like how much of an extent we need to because of accessibility purposes. Obviously, like if someone has a visual impairment or a hearing impairment, we're going to need some way to communicate. So in the end, it's not a practical idea, really. But I do love the idea of a game that was made in Japanese, that's French, staying in Japanese. I do love the idea of a game that's made in French, remaining in French, and ditto for games that are made in English, remaining in English, if it matters, if it's so tonally central to the idea, because Clair Obscur is so much about French identity.
Yeah, because I play
so the idea.
All of Ghost of Tsushima is done in Japanese. I can't play it any other way. Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I don't really think this, but I think it's an interesting idea to think about.
I just think it's such a bold stance for you to say that people have reduced France to a joke for so long that when you finally have a game that shows them it's not a joke, you're like, no, you shouldn't experience that. You should continue believing France is a joke. Fuck you.
Yeah, until you do better.
Yeah, but like, here's the evidence that you're wrong. I'm going to withhold that from you until you realize on your own that you're wrong.
The evidence is already out there. It's in the music of Charles Aznavour and Edith Piaf. It's in the building of Notre Dame. It's in the entirety. It's in Gauloise cigarettes. It's in all of everything that France has provided already. This is just the cherry on the cake. I fucking hate cherries.
That's where the Hunchback is, right? Notre Dame. That's
oh
where
my
it's in.
God.
Yeah, I've watched the Disney movie. I already knew.
Yeah, we know where he's at. You don't have to educate us.
See, clearly we appreciate French culture.
Mm-hmm.
God, shut your mouth.
I was waiting for. I've seen the Disney movie with the Hunchback, Ratatouille.
Yeah. So I'll let Banana kind of capstone our conversation on that stuff.
Yeah.
But
now I have to segue back into the actual fucking topic after. This is the greatest game of this generation. Also, everyone who's not French can eat a dick.
Also, please make your favorite game Clair Obscur.
That's not even this generation.
Do it for me.
It's Ratatouille.
Before Banana finishes his, have y'all played The Order? I think it's Order 1886.
No, a friend of mine played it though.
I think I have. I haven't played it all the way through, but I think I've played it briefly.
It's actually a really, really good game. It's a very short game. But it is a PS4 exclusive game, and that's why I kind of brought that one up, because it's one of the few games I could think of that I thought, what's a really, really good game that is exclusive to that console or that grouping. And The Order is one of them, and it's definitely one of those I would highly encourage if you have a PS4. Check out because that's the only way you can get it is if you have a PS4.
I do remember it being released and it being savaged because it had quite a lot of really strong praise in advance, but then when it came out, it was really short as a game, apparently not that interesting. But I wonder if it's a game now where, with the benefit of having a few years pass by, so we're not quite so sour about it because it looked so good, looked so interesting, and then you get it and it's actually just okay. Just okay games are a perfectly fine thing. I wonder if maybe now, without the expectation, there might be a lot more to enjoy than we initially thought. Yeah,
it doesn't have all the branching narratives and everything else. Is pretty straightforward, but I think it's still 20 hours. That's not bad. No?
Oh, I always thought it was much shorter than that because I heard it was a short game. But no, I haven't played it, but I would like to at some point. Another one of those weekend games where I would just like to spend one weekend, play it, and
Pretty sure you can get it
and
for
then
like
when I'm
maybe
done with it, be
$5,
done with
maybe. Yeah, shouldn't be.
it.
Yeah.
Can't even be that much anymore, right?
Yeah, worth it. Banana, you want to?
Yeah, we haven't let Banana do their thing because Banana
Yeah.
started talking too much.
So my pick for this generation is a little tricky because the game I actually went with was released on the previous generation. It was released on Xbox 360, and then a month later was released on Xbox One. So for me, this generation is Assassin's Creed Black Flag.
Oh yeah,
It is such a wonderful entry in that series, an entry where they did a lot of new things, where they really showcased what they were capable of, and it's just a fun game. It was super engaging. It was another one of those games where I had no issue investing the time to go do the side quests, go explore the world, go fight those really challenging enemies. Because if I remember, there's those 4 giant ships
in the corners of the world.
corners
Yeah.
that are, each of them has their kind of like gimmick that just makes them incredibly dangerous, and you have to really strategize around them. They were fun. And like, I again am not one of those people who's like, yeah, crank up the difficulty, make this as challenging as possible. I want to hate myself by the time I finally succeed. That's not me. But I enjoyed that aspect of the game. I enjoyed the fact that there were those outlier enemies that are like, yeah, they're optional. You don't have to play them. They're not tied to the main story. But the challenge exists, and it's fun. So Assassin's Creed Black Flag was kind of it because of the way that this Generation 4, as we've kind of titled it, bleeds into the most modern generation. For me, Black Flag is kind of like the most recent entry in console gaming that I remember standing out. There are plenty of great games that are on console that I've played on PC now, but this was kind of the last entry in my console gaming experience that felt very console and really sticks with me.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic choice. It's a wonderful, wonderful game. It didn't feel like anything it did, in my experience, was particularly revolutionary. They were definitely making changes from their established formula, but I felt like the Pirates ship-to-ship combat, I've had so much in common with Sid Meier's Pirates and with the Pirates of the Caribbean game from the original Xbox. It didn't feel like they were doing anything particularly new anytime, but everything they did it really, really well. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
It was so tight as an experience, and considering how much stuff there was to do in the game, there was never a point when I was playing it where I thought, oh, I've got nothing fun to do now, or I have to go and just do X thing that I'm going to hate. Everything in the game was at least good, and loads of it was really, really good. So having that sandbox given to you to just go and have fun was an interesting change of pace for the Assassin's Creed series, and just so very, very well refined. Sorry.
I also think it gets a little bit of a boost from the fact that, for whatever reason, they decided to release Assassin's Creed Rogue right alongside this, but only on the 360. So it was a game that was released almost around the exact same time, exclusively for the previous console, and I just fucking hated that game. We've talked about this. I'm a completionist, and this was one of those things where I was like, I've played every Assassin's Creed game so far. I want to play this one as well. I want to know the story that's contained in this game because I like this series. And I just remember Assassin's Creed Rogue being a slog. It was just like, oh, I feel like I'm working. I feel like I am just doing this tedious bullshit to get through so I can experience the story. And by the time I got to the end of it, I was just like, I don't like this story either. Right. Because I don't know if that's the story or the fact that I am associating it with a game I never wanted to play.
Yeah, I understand that.
And then going to Black Flag and just being like, this is everything that Rogue wasn't. just that harsh contrast between the two of them elevated Black Flag and pushed Rogue even further down in my estimation.
Yeah, I think it's very much the black sheep of the Assassin's Creed family, because when you think about it, there's no other game quite like it. You have the traditional Assassin's Creeds, where you have Assassin's Creed 1, which is kind of it's finding its feet, then Assassin's Creed 2 and its associated games, where you have actually quite a lot of foundation stones are laid for the series at that point, and you can feel how each game builds upon the other in terms of quality. Assassin's Creed 3, which feels like treading water, maybe sort of losing a sense of what they wanted to do with the series. It's a bit too formulaic. Then Black Flag comes in, and it's just completely different. And then we do it again, not long later, when we move into the new, into Origins, Odyssey, and whatever else there is. But those games all have something in common with each other. 1, 2, and 3 have something in common with each other. Black Flag doesn't really have anything in common with them in terms of its main gameplay. It does when you're on the island and you're doing a specific assassin-y thing. But the main gameplay isn't that. The main gameplay is the seafaring. The main gameplay is naval warfare. And it's just, there's only that. So I think it also adds to the, not notoriety, that's the wrong word, the legendary status of the game. Because there's just that. It didn't have the time to become boring and stale as the games went on. I thought Origins was really cool. I really enjoyed playing Origins. But then I made the mistake of playing Odyssey. And after 40 hours of Odyssey, I'm sick of it. I don't want to play Origins again. Black Flag. Okay, now...
Probably shouldn't play Valhalla then.
Okay. Black Flag, I think now there are games like it. But for the longest time, if you wanted to play a game like Black Flag, there was Black Flag. And that was it. Shall we move on to the fifth and final full generation, which should be PS5, Xbox Series X, and I think most importantly, it's really gaming post-2020. I think that's really where we are with this, because I know the PS5 didn't have its massive sales in the way the PS4 did, so a lot of people would still be playing on the PS4 if they're following the PlayStations. Xbox, same thing. PC gaming, we've seen, especially with what Legion was mentioning earlier, console exclusives often remaining console exclusives for a shorter time. People are going to have played these games on different things. So let's just say post 2020. Legion, do you want to lead in? Yeah.
Death Stranding 2. That's one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen, period. Aesthetically, the lines are clean. I don't agree with the font choices in many situations, because I've seen, I don't know the game story at all. I've just been watching here and there, but everything I see fits. It's one of those games that I'm not a big fan of course, cragginess and getting stuck on assets, and that's a lot of what the game is. But that being said, what I do see aesthetically and the presentation and everything Com has talked about with the story, I don't know if there's going to be a better game for consoles than Death Stranding 2. Mm-hmm. And it's early. It's only a few days old.
Yeah. Moving my list around. Shit. Okay. Fuck.
This is a tricky game this is a tricky era to pin down, because I mean, we just talked about it with Black Flag. That game was released on 360 and Xbox One.
Yeah. I
put it in the Xbox One era because that's how I experienced the game. And I deliberately waited that month to get the game on Xbox One, because that's how I wanted to experience the game.
Right.
There are plenty of games that were released for Series X, released for PS5, that are available on Xbox One and PS4. So they're not so harshly separated in the way that previous generations were. I mean,
I agree.
Dreamcast to N64, or I'm sorry, GameCube to N64, that is a huge separation of those games. You had the cartridge to the mini disc, and then you move to the Wii and Wii U, and that's a full-size disc. There's no backwards compatibility from GameCube to N64, from Wii to GameCube. It's just, they're so easily separated. This latest era is not so readily separated from the previous one that it's really tough to pinpoint, like, where the cutoff is and what games are more clearly associated with the modern generation than the generation before.
Yeah, you'll see in a moment my list, including the honorable mentions. I think half of them, more, are multi-platform. I think the main thing to consider is between, if you take the PlayStation as the easy example, there is definitely a hardware leap between the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, but it's nowhere near as pronounced as historical hardware leaps. We've seen that. And the take-up. There was not a massive take-up of the PS5. This means that companies likely wanted to keep developing their games for the PS4, because they'd have been stupid not to, because of how many more people own a PS4. If you want to sell your game to X amount of people, you have a better chance if you have more people you can sell it to. The PS5, naturally, there's not as many players of the PS4 because the PS4 has been, first of all, incredible in terms of its selling and staying power, but it's just been around for a long-ass time. The PS5, relatively short. We had our chip shortage issues, we had supply chain issues from COVID, and then also from the Ukraine wars. We had all sorts of potential problems stuttering the availability. So it's very rare to find games exclusively PS5 until very recently, or exclusively Xbox Series X until pretty recently, because it just didn't make sense to develop games in that way. It was just an unserious way to make your games for a while. And now we're 5 years into it, and we're starting to see exclusives. I mean, they've been around for a little while now, admittedly, but it's later in the cycle than we would have historically expected.
I guess we should have included Astrobot because it did win Game of the Year, but
it's in my honorable mentions, based upon my experience of Astro's Playroom, which I thought was incredible. Banana, do you have a title?
So for me, the one game that I can really kind of remember experiencing on this generation and it kind of like just sticking with me,
Stellar Blade.
Nobody Saves the World. It is it's an RPG that really doesn't feel like it has the same level of marketing behind it as most of the AAA games that are readily recognized by the gaming audience. It was something that I kind of stumbled into. I don't remember going and looking for this game. I just remember seeing it in the Xbox store and thinking, well, that looks kind of neat. What's going on with this? And then looking through the store page, looking at previews, the gameplay, and really appreciating the kind of new slant on what was not really a new mechanic. It's essentially an RPG that utilizes a job system, which, I mean, my favorite game of all time is Final Fantasy Tactics. What a surprise that I appreciated this game. It was just it felt like a modern take on those classic game mechanics of how do you utilize abilities to expand the world that you can access? How do you utilize this job system to kind of impact the turn-based combat that's going on in a way that made each of those new jobs feel fun? Because typically you'll find yourself in a situation where you're like, oh, I like all of the abilities in this job. Let's never leave this. I feel safe using this. I feel comfortable with these, and I can appreciate the efficacy of this job. And then you get a new job and you're like, well, now he has a wizard hat. That's pretty dope. Let's put that on. And then you experiment with that class. And you're like, all right, starting to feel comfortable. And this class seems effective as well. Maybe I'll switch between them. Maybe I'll just have a little bit of fun in this. When I get bored of this mechanic, I'll move over to the other one. Until you have the full collection of jobs and they're all fun and they're all engaging. And they all give you abilities that help you navigate the world. I think it was just such a really, really well done RPG that showcased all of those classic things in ways that felt like they had either never been done before or they were done well originally and then abandoned. So it brought back feelings of nostalgia with a game I've never played before. And I think that was a pretty impressive feat.
So Starfield didn't make the list, I guess. So
I've never even fucking played it.
I played it for like an hour and then it crashed, so it was good. Then I'll round off quickly with the newest generation. So for myself, there were a couple of honorable mentions. So Death Stranding 2 is an honorable mention because I'm only a few hours in, about 10 or 12, so I can't really claim it yet. The Last of Us Part 2, which I think is more previous generation, but same thing. My experience was on the PS5, so it's counted that way. Clear Obscure Expedition 33, which is a very, very high honorable mention and would probably have gotten to the top if it didn't fall off towards the end and have the UI issues, and if they hadn't appealed to the common market by putting it in English. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which was my favorite until I realized that there was one game which I think was more important to me in the modern generation, which I think is deserving of slightly higher praise. It's not a better game, but in terms of what it gave me is Helldivers 2. I think Helldivers 2 is my favorite experience of the modern generation of games, and I don't even know if it's... No, it must be a console game because of the Sony issue. I forgot about that. And
Helldivers just announced that it's going to be available to Xbox.
That's true. Yeah, a couple of days ago, right? Wasn't long. So Helldivers 2, I think, is one of the most fun multiplayer experiences I've played in a long time. It's pure, it's simple, it's joyous, it's easy to play in terms of what you're supposed to be doing. It's very, very scalable, so you can play with people who really aren't that much into these kind of video games or not. You can play easy mode, difficult modes, got all the different enemy types that you can decide. I fancy bugs today, I fancy bots today, I fancy the other fuckers who I've never really played against this day. And it's the perfect game to play with friends because it doesn't have to be a long time. I think the problem that
the best part is that difficulty setting does not impact how challenging it is to kill your teammates.
It does not reduce the effectiveness of the walking barrage upon your teammates in small areas.
Yeah.
And this is the special thing. Now, I think it's about as perfect a multiplayer game as we've ever seen. It's really, really incredible.
I think it does a lot of things right. I never saw anything that I thought was so unique from Alien Fireteam Elite. To me, it was the same game, just ported differently. And of course, with Aliens, it's so funny because it always gets a crowd that's loves Alien, and then the crowd that's like, I could take it or leave it. But Helldivers doesn't really focus on one particular group or anything, so it tends to get a wider net of people. But to me, it's the same game in many ways.
Yeah, so I've played both Alien Fireteams and Helldivers. They don't feel like the same kind of game to me. In the same way that Earth Defense Force doesn't feel like the same kind of game. I feel like they all have something that makes them stand out a little bit. And
well, I'll say mechanically it's very similar. Yeah.
Oh yeah, broad strokes they're similar. But I think there was a refinement to Helldivers that wasn't there in the others, and the variety in the gameplay. At some point, Alien Fireteam feels a bit like I'm mowing down bugs and just kind of hoping it comes to an end. Whereas I feel with Helldivers, with the I forgot what they're called, with the stratagems, with the changing weapons, with the ability to change, to share weapons with partners, for example. If you've brought in a machine gun, they brought in a rocket launcher, and suddenly you want to swap, the ability to do that has kept it very interesting. And the big thing as well is the variety of missions and the brevity of some of them. Being able to just play a 5-minute mission and get in and out. It's the perfect game to play with a group of people you actually like. If you have a group of friends that you want to play a game with, it is the perfect thing, because there's not enough time to get annoyed with each other that something isn't going that well. You expect it to die from time to time, and not in the way you are in Overcooked. When your friend kills you, when your friend makes you lose in Overcooked, it's frustrating, boring, it's annoying. Helldivers, your friend gets you killed, it doesn't matter. You come back in 10 seconds anyway. And let's see what voice your Helldiver's got now.
I'm a big fan of Helldivers overall. I think there are some issues, and especially around its initial release, there were some issues that I really didn't like. Some things that really bothered me about that game. There are some performance issues, some things with the coding that has presented problematic gameplay, and I am just philosophically against kernel level anti-cheat. I'm on board with. If you don't want people cheating in your game, I get it. kernel level anti-cheat, no, fuck you. It's not. It doesn't make sense. It's a security vulnerability that you're placing on my PC for the sake of a video game.
Right.
But overall, big fan. I still play the game. I enjoy it, and for exactly the same reasons. It's a great game to play with any group of friends, and it's not something that you have to commit a tremendous amount of time to. So you only have an hour, you can do a couple of missions, and it's gonna be fun.
And not forgetting, if you've got a buddy who plays the game for 150 hours and you've played it for 5, you're still the same. You're still the same. He's probably going to have some equipment that you don't have access to, but you can get access to that fairly quickly. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. If you want to try any of his equipment, normally he can share it with you as well, either by calling you one in or dying and having you pick his stuff up. So there's always... You never feel behind when you're playing Helldivers. The only thing your friend is going to be, they're going to just be better at the game because they played it more. But they're not going to be leveled up to the point they're a super soldier with more health than you. They get stabbed by that same stalker, they're going to die.
I was just going to ask, like, so you don't get rewarded for game time either, if that's the case.
No, not directly. You get new weapons.
Yeah, it's
you get
cosmetic mostly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why I don't like playing games where my friends have been playing for a week and now I don't see the point anymore. Because all of a sudden, wait, I'm 50 levels behind you? What the fuck am I going to do on my own? I tend to prefer games which put us on that even playing field.
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody being here. Thank you, AMKomnenos and Bananahammockrepublic, the sleepless Bananahammockrepublic.
We got way off topic, and I was like, oh, we're sitting here and recording when I could be asleep. Except we're recording stuff we absolutely will not use.
And you can look forward to that content in a secondary video.
Yeah. Check us out on a new channel that we're starting for no reason.
So if there's a particular game that you thought we missed in the consoles, best consoles throughout the generations,
we missed all of them.
Yeah, put it in the comments. We appreciate you guys. We'll check you later. Bye-bye.